Welcome to the Spacedojo show. I'm your host, Josh Owens, along with my co-hosts, Ben Strahan and Ramsay Lanier. Welcome, guys.
What's up, team?
What's up? What's up, Josh? Joshy Poo.
Hey, that's my nickname for him.
I stole it.
Guys.
I see how this is going to be. All right. Tug of war over Josh.
Quit fighting. There's enough of me to
Tug of war, Owens. That didn't work out very well.
No,
I thought I was going to be better than that.
I'm 1 point up now.
Edit that one out, would you?
All right. We have a special guest with us this week, Charlie Key. Welcome to the show, Charlie.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. It's a pleasure to fight over Josh. I'll go around too.
Well, you're at least closer. So
I know. I can hunt you down.
You got a leg up there. So Charlie, we invited you to the show. Well, before we get into why, you also, okay, let me rewind. You started a startup recently called Losant, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So what is Losant?
So Losant is an IoT developer platform. And what that really means is we try to do three things really easy for developers building what we call connected solutions. I'll give an example here in a second, but those three pillars that we kind of think are really important is connectivity. And by connectivity, we mean being able to take any random piece of hardware, whether it's an Arduino board or particle photon, whatever it happens to be, and connect it and have it start sending data to a platform. And the second piece of that is visualizing data. So, inside of our platform, you can create dashboards, you can aggregate data. There's a powerful API behind all of that. And the last piece is taking action on that data. And we do that through a very simple to use drag and drop workflow engine. And in that workflow engine, you can define rules and business logic up in the cloud level for your devices and for the data kind of running through. And that's all meant to happen kind of in real time. We have kind of looked at that as a IFTTT workflow engine on crack, is the way we kind of think of that, but really real time. So, we're working with a ton of developers, had a lot of developers signed up for the platform. We kind of started out by giving away a bunch of free hardware. That was fun. We gave out like 600 kits of hardware in like 5 days, and then stopped doing that. That was a few too many pieces of hardware. But we also work with some enterprises really looking at how they can solve some bigger problems. We're working with the company tracking forklifts and understanding how those forklifts are interacting in the space and trying not to create incidents. So more or less they run their forklifts in the crap is what happens. But, different examples in the world, but really we try to build a platform for developers that can be used to create these applications. And it's really targeted for developers and with developers in mind.
So Charlie, how did this idea get birthed?
Yeah. So there was a lot of different things that kind of came together to really do this. We had a startup before this. We started in Cincinnati called Modulus, which was a node.js Meteor node platform as a service that we started. And while we're doing that, we ended up selling that company to Progress Software. And while doing that, we ended up having a lot of conversations with people about IoT. And a lot of those conversations revolved around could Modulus be this platform for IoT? And it really just wasn't in the plan, the vision. So it kind of gave us a little thought around what that could be. Living where I live, we kind of live in a very Midwestern area, lots of industrial, lots of manufacturing. My family's kind of been in manufacturing for a long time. So talking to them, talking about some of the problems that they have and what they're looking at doing and how they're using technology to do it, really kind of gave me a lot of passion about trying to solve some of this. I remember sitting down with my family and talking about some of the problems they were having with automating their facilities and learning about their processes. And taking that and going, that's something that would be a lot of interest and fun to kind of build and help solve. So kind of went with that. And I've been a hacker, for a long time. My degree is in engineering and have been playing with Arduinos since then. So that's a bit of a passion project too, as well, just to get out and play around with a bunch of different stuff.
Nice. So I'm curious, like, I love the interface, by the way. It reminds me a lot of like Yahoo Pipes back in the day.
Yeah.
I kind of wish like Zapier or If This and That had a similar kind of interface. Like multi-zaps are fun to play with, but I wish there was like a diagram drawing like this. So that's pretty awesome. How does the data get into Losant to like build a dashboard or to do real-time alerting or any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that the data gets in there. Behind the scenes, basically, we use two different methods right now. One is using a REST API. You can send data into the platform. The second is using MQTT, which is more of a real-time kind of hub sub type platform protocol. And we use that as our kind of base layer for pushing data in and out. We've built SDKs for Arduino and node.js, and we've got a few more coming out. So, kind of really plug and play from that perspective. You can also send data in using webhooks. We've got some people sending data in from a bunch of random kind of different ways, but, kind of that core mentality from us is take open protocols like MQTT and REST and give access to push the data using those and push it as much as you want.
Very cool. Very cool. So I'm interested. It seems like you're bridging the gap between the enterprise and what IoT used to be, which is like the hobbyist, the maker and all that stuff. Like what's that like being that bridge,
It's kind of tough sometimes. So, we take that mentality for a lot of reasons, but, we believe that the way the market looks today in the world of IoT, it is very much in that stage of it has to be a bridge between developers and the enterprises. I think we really truly believe that developers are going to help drive what a lot of these businesses choose and how they choose to do it in the future. We've seen that in the past with our other companies, but it becomes a multi-headed problem though. One is working with developers and building a community and ecosystem. And if there's anything that's for sure, it's developers are smart and they'll call bullshit on you whenever they get a chance. So you got to be straightforward and be very value add. In the enterprise space, it's about understanding how you can make those developers the champions inside of the company, how you can help drive that forward, and how you bring in the relevant stakeholders across the business in an enterprise setting in order to make a solution happen. And that's a really multi-headed problem that we find is fun to solve because we enjoy working with developers and we enjoy thinking about it from a kind of a holistic solution view. And that's fun to talk to the VPs and work with the developers to kind of come together and meet that middle ground. So, but I think a lot of it starts with the developers.
That's cool. Yeah. So I noticed that you had like a couple SDKs for Arduino and stuff like that. So it sounds like you make, once you collect the data, like visualizing all that super easy, but can you talk about how the SDK works a little bit and how like it helps actually connect devices to the platform?
Yeah. So what we did is, most of our SDKs are built on top of MQTT. For the platforms, they can fall back to different protocol and methods. But what they basically allow you to do is in like 7 lines of code, connect to the platform and start sending what we call state. So sending data directly to the platform. What that data looks like, is kind of up to you. Inside of Losant, you define devices and define more or less the model of what that data should look like going into the platform. There's some more ad hoc ways you can do it too, but that's the preferred because you get automatic kind of typing on that data and for visualization and everything else. So it allows for a lot of easy stuff. But The base of that is include the library. You have to generate some security keys. Looking at IoT, security is one of those kind of things you gotta make sure you cover, and you cover well. So we kind of do a lot of different things from the security aspect. One is you can create device level tokens, so you can create a security token per device that is part of an application. You can create them at the application level. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of do that. So you connect, put the device in, put the security keys in, and then you can pretty much pull and push data from the platform that device has access to. So it's pretty simple. I mean, in order to get a Raspberry Pi up and running, or an Arduino, you're talking 5-10 minutes, and you kind of got data up and running. We're playing with some cellular devices to start pushing data to. Shout out to Connect on that, but we're starting to work with a lot of that cellular data as well. We've got solutions using the platform using cellular data, and again, it's very similar. So we use the Intel Edison a lot for our base device, which is then running Linux Octo, and using node.js to kind of push that data up, which is a lot of fun. We love Node. Our entire platform is built on top of Node across the whole thing from the back end, and then all of our front ends kind of built in React. And it is a static site built to talk to the API is what it is. So it's pretty cool. So really anybody can build the interface that we've got on top of it using the API.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, what does that stack look like? And are you guys building little microservices then to kind of handle each little piece that you're working with?
Yeah. So starting kind of at the bottom, we're using Google Cloud as our infrastructure layer. So we use Google Compute Engine as the base compute. There's a lot of reasons that we chose to go that route. More or less, it doesn't really matter. It's machines. We don't actually use any of the Google services directly. We just pretty much use Linux boxes. It gives us advantages later on as we kind of move and scale. But so we've got Google Compute. The nice thing about it is it does do encryption at rest for the drives and everything. So that's a nice security checkbox too. Stepping up a layer, our main time series database layer is InfluxDB. We found massive success with that at Modulus. We had scaled that to, I think we were doing about maybe 10 billion data points a month through it when we left there, and we ended up switching off of Mongo and going into Influx for that database layer. Now, I will say that we're always looking at other layers, database layers, currently, just because we want to know what's available out there and how things are changing, especially in that time series space, because aggregation and kind of pulling that data out in real time is a big part of the platform. So we want to keep evaluating that. We also have sitting next to that Mongo for a bunch of random data, like user data, random semi-relational kind of data inside of the platform, and just super easy to use. So, and then we've got pretty much Node talking to that across the board. The way that kind of looks like is we have one service that is collecting the data with an MQTT broker, and that's kind of horizontally scalable. So we kind of have that horizontally scalable using DNS above it. So we've got multiple brokers that we can redundantly have to pull the data in and kick it in the database. Then it gets really microservicey with what we call kind of the workflow runners. So the things that actually do the workflow runners are each piece is basically a little composed block that is sandboxed every time it runs. And that can be pulled up and dropped onto as many machines as possible to kind of handle the scale. So, we can scale that workflow runner fairly horizontally. And then each block that you would see inside of kind of our interface, or each node, is just a sandboxed kind of piece of software there. Oh, let's see. Sitting on top of that, we have an API, the API layer. That's directly accessible from the external world. That's just the API that we use. Sitting on top of that is an API that's available for visualization of data. Someone's getting yelled at. Visualization of data. So anything you build in like in a dashboard, we actually have an API to pull that data out directly from what you would see in the dashboard block. And then the API on top of that, and then across the side are kind of these SDKs that are all driving back into that SDK. I think that's pretty much it. There's a few other probably little things here and there.
Yeah. Have you ever looked at React Storybook? It just came out a couple weeks ago.
I haven't. Could tell me about it.
Well, so it's the idea that like you can create a React component and it's kind of encapsulated on its own, and you can do all the design in something like Storybook and then publish that. I'm kind of curious if you guys have thought about like publishing React components, since like they're set up to really kind of work with your API data. I wonder if it would be interesting to developers to be able to pull those in and build their own dashboard.
Yeah, we definitely have. And it's still something that we're pretty actively looking at, just because we think that building custom interfaces on top of the API is going to be a big way that the data can be used. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at options of any possibilities of open sourcing any of the components, whether it's the whole thing to individual pieces of the interface. But yeah, the React components is definitely one of those that we're actively trying to figure out what the best way to allow people to get their hands on those and use those is. So yeah, it's cool though. It's super cool, actually.
Sounds way awesome. So like I want to take a step back for a moment. And so do you think, or is your primary target like M2M?
We've thought about that a lot too.
And I should say before you get going, maybe you could explain what M2M is for a lot of people
who
probably don't know.
So M2M is machine to machine is what it stands for. But M2M is what we see a lot in some manufacturing facilities, at least in some other use cases. But a lot of it's directly talking machine to machine and trying to make decisions between those machines is kind of the lofty goal, and then you can automate a lot of these pieces. And so, yeah, I think that's a big part of what we think long term. There's a lot of potential there. What we see today is, we'll say machine to service, is pulling data from machines and driving them into a service in order to derive information and insight off of that. A lot of people are a little bit weary of stepping back to the machine. Now, certainly we see a lot of like random stuff, like, inside of a home or a smart house or a smart office, there'll be some machine to machine type stuff. And then more of the industrial space, they're still a little weary of going through the system and then back to a machine to make a decision. Whereas, they do that via a PLC or a control system inside of the manufacturing that they would do today. So, I think long-term, absolutely. Shorter term, I think we'll see more of this machine to service, machine to information, machine to visualization. And some of that will dip back into the machine to machine, and then that'll expand over time.
So that leads into my next question, which kind of goes back to an older one. But do you see enterprise like adopting this like maker mentality more rather than looking for a complete end product? Because like you're part of a larger ecosystem that like an enterprise would come and like kind of mash together exactly what they need.
Yeah. To a certain extent we are. But I will say that from kind of our go-to-market strategy is a lot around working with the partners that are also delivering these kind of end-to-end solutions, and the developers in those spaces. So, you take a systems integrator that works for P&G and helps build out a system for their manufacturing facility. We think those are perfect partners for us to work with. Because one, they understand the software layer enough to integrate it with that whole machine layer and the hardware layer that they're really experts in. So we see that's a long-term play. I mean, building these partnerships is a lot of work, and you have to build a lot of them in order to kind of get that adoption and growth. But we think it's one of the ways that we think long-term it is. Today we are trying to find those ones that have more of a maker mentality and trying to solve some of their own problems, have their own development teams, and those are usually bigger in size and a little more scrappy. So it's a variety. Long term, I think a lot of the partners will come into play with that.
This might be a weird question, and maybe it's because I live in DC, but has there been any interest, or have you had any talks with any governmental services, or is that?
Yeah, we've had several. There was a really interesting that came through earlier this year for the government put out it's a notification of funding opportunity, I think is what they call it, NFO or something like that, which is around smart cities and around adding information and using data and sensors to improve the lives of the cities. I am a little bit sad to say that Cincinnati did not actually put in an application for this, which was a little bit disappointing and sad to see. But we talked to the city about some of those opportunities. They're trying to as like a mid-sized city, they're trying to figure out what the budgetary thoughts are on a lot of this stuff and where the immediate value that they could see on these. I know some cities are doing a fantastic job of this. You take a look at, even in the kind of the Midwest, you take a look at Kansas City, what Boulder's trying to do, even Chicago and Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and they're all trying to do a lot of this stuff and push the boundaries there. And then of course you have the big cities, which obviously they're doing a lot in this space. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there. It's a space that we personally don't understand as well, and we're trying to. We spend a lot of time talking to our local officials and people that are in that kind of space to understand it a little bit better and how that game is played and how the proposals are put together and all the pieces there. So it's.
I would think there's actually a lot of interesting opportunity. Have you seen the bus detective stuff?
Yeah. Did Gaslight worked on some of that stuff, right?
Yeah, totally. Which is, I used to be a partner there, and I don't know, I always keep tabs on those guys. They're doing cool things. But for those that aren't familiar, the buses are instrumented, and so there's a bus schedule that, hey, we're gonna stop at this stop at 4:45 p.m. But buses never run on time, right? They're always late. So all the buses are instrumented and have the data where they're at right now, and so you could know hey, your bus is running 9 minutes behind, and that's the idea behind Bus Detective. Is a little app on your phone that tells you hey, your bus is coming, it'll be there at this time instead of that time. But I got to see kind of a behind the scenes look, and the API that they were offering is really just a file with a bunch of data in it, and they're parsing it out rather than getting a true API that they can make calls to. So I would think that there's a lot of potential there to work in that capacity with governments, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I've done some. I was at a hackathon that was put on by the Census Bureau, and the same thing, their API. I can think of no better source of data for anything. It's just a ridiculous amount of data, but it's incredibly complex and hard to get to. And it's, of course, it takes years to a whole year for them to compile this data. And so I don't know, I think this would be, there's got to be some cooler way to help automate some of this data collection. And so I'm really impressed and happy that you've even reached out and thought about how it's to help governments provide these type of services. So that's cool.
I think it's awesome. I mean, some of the stuff that New York is doing, they're working with a small private group to do public Wi-Fi across the entire city. I mean, there's a lot of awesome stuff that's going on at the government level. like I said, I don't understand all of the inner workings on getting all those things to come together. And that's one of our, just our internal problems is we got to get better at that. But I think there's a lot of awesome, really useful value that can be added to the citizens and to the government itself. Obviously they want to understand this understand this data better and easier. And the citizens and the people in the city definitely want to understand it better. And we're trying to do a couple early pilots from air quality and understanding what air quality is across the city and individual neighborhoods. I think is an interesting one because some of the data they have says that air quality is one of like the top 4 indicators of socioeconomic value and kind of level in an area. So, but again, we don't have granular data on a lot of those pieces. So that's data that can be easily grabbed and put into a place that they can get a hand on.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So switching it up, I guess, what do you see like long term, like 20, 30 years down the road, like, when cars can start driving themselves, they start talking to each other and
get the magic ball out.
Yeah.
Yes, cars will be driving themselves. I think 20, 30 years down the road, definitely. I think we'll see a lot of industries take a massive change. Let's take logistics, trucking, for instance. There's it's one of the highest employment occupations in the country is being a truck driver. And when trucks can drive themselves, I'm sure that trucking companies will have self-driving trucks. So there's going to be a lot of change. I think education has to be improved across the technical sectors in order to give people a better opportunity to expand their second career. I think I can't remember who was saying this, but it's continued education, but second career after the world changes and you have to pick up a skill set.
You say it so nicely. So like the economy is going to crash. Like the transportation industry is like our biggest thing that goes towards our GDP pretty much. And so like if we automate that, like I'm just glad that we have the careers that we have.
Yeah. We're definitely in a different position than a lot of people.
We're the ones that are like that are bringing the doom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that exact same thought the other day. I was driving and I think I heard something on the radio or something about automated trucks, and I was in rush hour traffic and I was surrounded by like these large trucks, and I was like thinking, man, this is going to be a real problem for people. They're gonna.
Yeah, it's going to be you're going to see the same things happen in manufacturing. You look at mid-tier manufacturing from $10 million to $1 billion in revenue. Those are all still manual processes driven by people. Pretty much 95% of it. It won't be that way in 30 years. There is so many industries that are going to be completely disrupted and partially torn apart from where the technology is driven. I don't think we'll have flying cars yet. I don't
know that we're ever going to have them. It doesn't make
sense.
It's too unsafe.
Yeah. And I speak a little bit from, personal, my wife works for GE Aviation, where she's in charge of working with the FAA to certify an engine to put onto a new plane. And that's, top to bottom, 6, 7, 8 year process to put one new engine on a new plane, and you're going to just start letting people fly these things around. I don't think so.
And it's just not energy efficient.
No, not energy efficient. I mean, there's a reason plane tickets cost $500. It's not because they're gouging you.
Yeah. So I guess this is something I'm really interested in. I have 2 young daughters, and I'm always looking at interesting ways to like get them to learn technology. Basically, for this reason that I want them to have like successful careers in. I mean, whatever makes them happy, but obviously there's going to be more need for technological focused careers going down the road. So
there's 2 jobs. There's two jobs. Either you could be a programmer or a maker. That's one. The other one is an entertainer.
Yeah.
It's going to be everyone's going to need to laugh and everyone's going to need maintenance on their robot.
Right. Until you make robots that are funny.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Anyway,
Or I guess there's just one job, slave.
So I guess my question is, I don't know if you have children, but like, what are some good ways that we can get, and not just kids, but like people who aren't currently involved in technology, but maybe they're interested. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. So part of the question, I don't have any kids yet. So I do actively think about this though, especially working in the field that we do, and a lot of people and friends do have kids and are trying to think about this actively too. Is I don't know. I think that's a hard question. One, because I don't spend enough time thinking about it. Maybe I should spend more time thinking about it. But definitely more entertaining educational programs. Is definitely one of those pieces. I think we've already seen a lot of kids try to pick up programming because they wanted to make a new Minecraft level, right? Like, that's props to that. I mean, that's been a huge push in the right direction. And I remember, one of the things I wanted to do when I was growing up was create video games. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to program video games, not just draw them and make them, but program them. There was nothing really that I could do until probably college to even really start really doing that really in any respect. I think we've got enough tools that we can start teaching people today to, whether it's through drag and drop interfaces, whether it's, Lego Mindstorms and a bunch of other kind of opportunities there. I think they're doing a lot of really cool things. I mean, you see hardware hackers that are doing a lot of kids stuff, and we'll see that hardware get easier and easier. And I think that gives a lot of opportunity to get kids involved. I think we got to have some formal education programs too, inside of the schools. That's a much bigger challenge, in my mind, is convincing the schools that this needs to become more of a priority.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like our kids go to Wyoming, which is like one of the top. They're always jockeying for a top 3 position in the state, and they actually have what they call Fab Lab here. At the middle school, and it's like a fabrication laboratory, and so they have like CNC machines, they have 3D printers, they have access to like everything, and they put together clubs after school. They have classes you can take during the day that like teach you how to do all this stuff. So I think that's an amazing step towards it. And back to what you were saying about Minecraft, I know you and I have actually had a conversation about this offline. I've been working on getting together a nonprofit in this area as well, because I went to Gaslight actually had like a kids tech day, and they did what you're talking about, right? They were teaching kids Scratch programming. They were teaching kids they didn't do a great job on modding Minecraft, and I think that's maybe a deeper class, but and then also doing like Lego Mindstorms, and I think that's like, kids have a natural curiosity and they want to play games. And so if you can like hook them in young enough and be like, look, you can make an exploding cow, like, you're absolutely right. Like, they're going to want to do that, and they're going to be learning at the same time and not even realize that they're learning. They're just going to be like, look at this neat thing I made. And to them, they're just being a maker. They're not really being like a programmer or anything like that, which can sometimes be a turn off, I think, to some kids. Like, I don't want to sit there and stare at code all day, but when they see they can actually do something with it, I think it becomes way more interesting to them. So,
did you say exploding kittens?
I said cows, but kitten works too, if that's your game.
I never want to show my kids that game.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, talking about like bridging the gap and getting kids involved in all that stuff. Like what are some of the big hurdles that you see right now in the IoT space that like they need to get over?
I might preface that too. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what you guys did at Christmas time too.
Oh yeah, sure. So I'll talk a little bit about the challenges, and I'll talk a little bit about what we did at Christmas and some of the projects that we're looking at working on right now. So I think there's a couple of things. One of the biggest is just availability of easy to use hardware, availability to hardware in general. You go to even a hackathon for adults, and there's almost going to be no access to stuff they can hack around and play with from a hacker and maker standpoint. So that's got to be available. That's not that hard to solve, but it is capital intensive from at a large scale. I think that's the first thing. The right tools. So getting them access to the right tools, getting them to understanding the right tools, training, and whether it's a school program, after school program, or a community program, starting to build those up from the ground. And I think that's one that if we started, say this group started to put around an organization and started to think about how that plan works and started to pull people in, I think you could move that forward a bit and drive that from a local level and move it out and get some other communities involved as well. But those are two big things. One of the things that we like doing, and we've done once, we'll be doing a little bit more of, is we did an interactive space for Christmas. We called it How the Internet of Things Saves Christmas. It was around it was really around how can we make Internet of Things approachable to a wide variety of the public, and show them some of the novel ways that it could be used in people's lives and for fun. So we basically took the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation movie and took some of the problems they had in the movie, whether it was burning the turkey or getting the lights to work or some of the fun things. So the sled and showing how IoT could be used to either fix those problems, show some of the data about it and get insight. And then, we did simple things and just had little bits in the place, which is an awesome tool for teaching simple circuits and stuff. And invited people to come check out these. We talked about them, showed them off, and talked about IoT as a whole. And also it was a fun place to bring kids and hang out for an hour and just to do stuff like that. This summer we're working with a group here in Cincinnati about it's called Play Library. It will be at the People's Liberty Glow building. So People's Liberty is a nonprofit organization that gives groups grants to do interesting projects. And this one person won a grant, and they're going to have a library where you can come rent toys and have fun in the space. And we're working with them to help liven it up through different IoT stuff. And I think those things just generally, one, help the brand, but two, help understand and show everyone that, look, this stuff is going to be in your lives, and it's going to help solve some things. It's going to help entertain. We know that the only two jobs later are going to be programmers and entertainers. So it's got to entertain you, and we can help program it. So
nice. I like it. We should totally do that thing we talked about before, which is like not your dad's derby race.
Mm-hmm.
Where we have like a derby track that's totally instrumented up, and then like no rules. Like we'll just lift all the derby rules, except it has to fit on the track and stay in your track slot.
Yeah. We can do that. That's for sure.
That would be awesome.
It'd be really cool.
All right. I think we're getting to the end here. So I want to say thank you, Charlie, for being on the show. It was really awesome to talk about all this stuff.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I think it's great. I also think, maybe one last question is like, what you talked about having SDKs and like, building these libraries that people can kind of consume with their devices and utilize to send data. Like, is most of that built with JavaScript, or are you finding other languages? Or
so we have a JavaScript library. We'll probably have another one or two for for client side and a couple others. But we also have a C++ library. We'll have a .NET library, Python library, Java library, and then probably an iOS SDK as well.
Nice.
Going forward. So it'll be built in a variety of languages, but most everything else is built in JavaScript.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Let's do our picks, guys.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go first so no one can steal mine. It's day after Game of Thrones, so I'm going to take Game of Thrones. I don't know. I actually,
making your life easier.
it's making my life better. I don't know about easier, but better.
All right. Okay.
Or maybe more frustrating. It was a slow episode last night, but I watched this. Huh?
I don't want to steal your thunder. Go ahead.
I watched this video on like the theories behind Jon Snow and how he's gonna come back to life, and like
it was a very boring episode.
Well, but I'll have to link this in the show notes, but this theory video came out about a month ago, and the guy was talking about how he believes Jon Snow is a Targaryen, which I've heard the theory before, but now that he's dead, and like the theory of how he's going to come back to life is all really, really interesting, assuming it happens, which I think it will. Anyway, I geek out on Game of Thrones. What can I say?
I've only seen one episode.
Get off right now. You're fired.
And which one was it?
I don't even know. How would I even know how to compare? Yes, I'll go next. So, you know what I love is, this isn't going to be my pick, but I love House of Cards. And I just wrapped up season 2. So I got another 2 seasons to go. I'm like, I don't watch TV that much. I don't know what.
Clearly not.
Yeah. So anyway, my pick is an old one, MIT Spark.
Oh, yeah.
Which is programming for
Scratch?
Children. Scratch. That's what it is. Something else is called Spark.
Have you seen Scratch Junior? I think PBS Kids has like a app for it. It's called Scratch Junior.
Oh, yeah?
But it's like, you definitely check that out.
Very cool. Yeah, this past weekend, my kids are in like an enrichment program or whatever, and they're programming. They have to answer all their math questions by programming the answers and using that service. And so it was great. I felt like a good old dad teaching my kids how to like basic programming. It was like an awesome weekend. So
yeah, nice. I started my son on Scratch, on JavaScript, and then we found Scratch, and like he probably spent a couple hours on the Raspberry Pi, actually. Like he had it hooked up in his room, and it came with the Raspberry Pi. So ton of fun playing with that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool, I'll go. By the way, it's scratchjunior.org is like their PBS version. It's pretty fun. It's for like younger kids. I'm going to go with slither.io. Have you guys played this at all?
Yes.
Have you guys played Agar or agar.io?
Yes.
Slither.io is it's like that. It's a game. You're like a snake, and you're on a server with like 500 people, and the goal is to just eat these little dots and to be the biggest snake. But then you can you have to cause other snakes to run into your trail, and then when they do, they die, and you can eat their power or whatever. It's like the simplest. It's like a really simple game, but it's incredibly addicting, and it's, I don't know, super fun. I've started playing it last week. But yeah, you should check it out. It's fun.
Great. I'm sitting here playing it. That's the biggest snake I've ever seen.
Dude, when you start off with a little guy and then you run, you see like a big guy.
That's awesome. I just a quick side story of that. One of the first successful iOS applications I ever built was a snake game that ended up getting to be #1 in Sweden and a few other countries on the App Store. It was based off of the old school Nokia game. All right, so my pick is going to be Nice Trails, nicetrails.com. And it is very different from the rest of these, but it allows you to upload GPS data and we'll create a GPS route data, and we'll create a 3D printed model of the route and the surrounding terrain. Very cool if you go outside and hike it all. I had two made. One was the route that my wife and I did down into the Grand Canyon and back out, and actually one of skiing route out in Switzerland. And they just 3D print them, and they basically 3D printed with the color of the landscape, and it's just killer, a lot of fun, just super simple. Kind of taking a lot of technologies and gluing them together to make something really fun and interesting.
That's awesome.
This is rad. So my father-in-law is currently in Spain right now doing the Compostela walk. It's he's doing it for the second time. So this is cool. So like, you put the GPS data in? And you just have to track it yourself, and then you put it in?
I actually used a service to, I'm going to try to remember it right now, but I used a service to, that I could pull up the trail route and then modify it on their website and then download the GPS coordinates is what I ended up doing. Now I got to try to remember what that was. All right, I can't remember. I can drop it in the meeting notes later, though. But so it allowed me, because we did like a regular trail, more or less, at the Grand Canyon. So I could put that in, and it would visualize it, and I could then modify it inside of their software, and then download the GPS coordinates for it. I did the same thing for a route that we did at Yosemite, which was actually a combination, and it was pieced together from 3 or 4 different routes. So it worked really well for that. But yeah, worked out, a lot of fun, super easy. I did have to modify the data a little bit using GPS Visualizer, which just converted it to a very simple GPS file. But
that's awesome.
Very cool. I'll definitely be using this for a present at some point.
Yeah. I've been wanting to try. Autodesk has this software that they showed off a while ago. I don't know if you guys know what Autodesk is, but they had a GoPro attached to a drone, and as it flies through, it takes photos every 5 seconds. You upload the photos to like their software, and it creates a point cloud file, which then you can generate like massive 3D topography with, and it has the image overlaid on it. So I love that stuff. I'm like a total nerd. So I'm going to definitely check this out.
That's super cool. All Trails, alltrails.com is what I use to create the trail maps and download the GPS coordinates.
Very cool. And with that, I just died in Slither.
You were playing this whole time. Nice. I got like 1,200 points, and I died too.
Dude, wait till you ever get like 20,000 points. It's crazy.
Yeah. I saw some guys flying in there like at super speed.
Yeah, if you hold the mouse down or use spacebar, you fly. You like go super fast.
Didn't know that. Nice. All right. Well, thanks guys for being on the show. Special thanks to Charlie. It was awesome to talk Internet of Things. So appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right. And tune in next time. I don't know who it will be, but we're talking to, I'm trying to get people to talk about GraphQL or Redux or any of those kinds of things. So who knows? Maybe we'll have someone interesting for the next one as well.
Someone interesting to talk about Redux?
We'll start playing around with Apollo over the weekend. Next one.
Yeah, maybe we can get someone to talk about Apollo.
Maybe. We'll see.
I don't know if we know anyone. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. This video has been a Spacedojo production. You can click the Learn More button to find out more about us at spacedojo.com. Or you can click the subscribe button to get notified about new videos we put out each week. Thanks for watching.